Hey, everybody. Welcome to the first interview in our new series. I wanted to kind of take a look at what's going on in the Black community as far as the high rates of incarcerated men goes, and the women that are married to them or in romantic relationships with them. I wanted to find out from their perspective, how do they feel? What kind of feelings are going on when they're in a relationship with a guy like this? Did they meet him during his stay, before his incarceration, or afterwards? What difference does it make, or it doesn't make one, on how long the guy was in there and what the charges were? How are most of them when they get out? How do they treat their mates? All these kind of things are what I wanted to explore in this series. So we have our first interviewee. Her name is Sarah. She's 30 years old. She works in the legal field, amazingly enough. And she's from the southern part of Louisiana. No children, nothing like that's going on. So at least that's not a part of her story. But I feel that when she got involved with this character, she was just a child herself, only 17 years old. So I want to hear directly from her what went on and how this happened. So Sarah, welcome to the show. Welcome to this interview.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you.
And thank you for being so brave and volunteering to share your story with channel visitors like this. I always thank people for setting aside some time to respond to my nosy questions. It's like,
No problem.
but so let's say in your note to me, your original note, you said that you met this guy when you really, as you started getting involved with him when you were only 17, but you had grown up with him. So how was that?
I know usually when I watch your interviews, people start from the beginning, from their life, like from childhood, and kind of like what led them to, situation. So for me, I know I grew up in a family, not pretty much all of the men have been in jail in my family. They all have been to jail. The majority of them have felonies, and I have most of the men in my family, they are criminals, but they just didn't get caught.
Important difference.
So it's just, for me, it was very regular, real regular for me to be around those type of men. I actually didn't realize something was wrong with that until I got into my undergrad program. And I started to be around young ladies whose fathers, brothers, and uncles actually, they didn't make their money the way that the men in my family did. Like, I literally had no clue because it was just so common to me. And so I grew up with that. My dad, he is literally like a former kingpin in the area that I'm from in Louisiana. So that's really why I blocked out my name, because if people were to see my last name, they automatically know who my dad is. And I've gotten a lot of heat behind that, especially being in the legal field. Like I've told you before the recording started, I do have a Juris Doctorate. I just haven't sat for the bar yet, but I do litigate pro se. And what that is, I litigate on my own matters. So I've had debt collectors sue me and things like that. And so I have the knowledge to be able to go and defend myself. So I do that type of litigation. And when I go into the courtrooms, people, once they see my name, my last name, like I've had judges like straight up stop the trial and say, like, is such and such your dad? Is such and such your grandpa? Are you related to these people? And I'm like, yes, Your Honor, that's my grandfather. That's my father. And
oh, damn.
Yeah, and then they'll say like, wow, I'm surprised you're on this side of the bench and not on the other side. So it's really difficult in the area that I'm in, with the last name that I have. But, that's my family and I still love them. But, I just decided to take a different path. And so for me, growing up, it was just real regular.
I see.
Everybody, all the men around me was in the type of what we call the underworld activity. So I never knew that anything was wrong with that until I got into undergraduate school.
And you were what, about 19 or so?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And, before I was born in New Orleans, I was raised there for like the first 9 years of my life. And then my mom and my dad, moved. Well, my mom and my dad, they got divorced when I was 3. They got divorced when I was 3, but we still stayed in New Orleans. Then when I was 9, my mom, she moved us to the country, the more rural part, to be with our, our family that we had in the country, because during that time, it was like the height of the crack era in New Orleans, and it was just really, really, really bad. And so like when we would go to school, like you literally had to fight before you allowed to get on the playground. Like
the crackheads?
Yeah, fight the crackheads. You had crackheads like just roaming around. You had men who would just like literally walk off the street and they would assault the school children. And also, my peers, we're in elementary school, but everybody was in a gang. Like in how it is in New Orleans, we have wards, W-A-R-D. So whatever ward you're from, like you have to stick with that ward. And so it was just like everybody, if you was from a particular area, then you had to be with those people from your particular area. And if one person fought, everybody had to fight. And so it was like that when I went to elementary school. Like we were just all fighting each other. The kids was fighting each other. We had to watch our backs from, the dope fiends coming in, the people trying to rape us. And like, it was just a really, really bad situation that no child should ever have to experience. So my mom, she moved us out to the country.
I don't blame her. Oh my God.
She moved us out to the country. And so that was definitely a culture shock for me, because I had never really been around. That's like literally my first time I ever saw white people in abundance like that. And so it was a true culture shock for me to be around, just a whole bunch of white people, be in the country. I'm hearing cows mooing in the morning. the roosters. Like literally, like even now, like my alarm clock on my phone is a rooster, because I'm so used to waking up to hearing the cows and the roosters, doing what they do in the morning.
Girl, you was in the deep country.
Yes. And so where we lived the first part, I didn't meet Michael then because he wasn't my neighbor then. So it was about when I got into middle school. My mom, she was able to save up more money, because my dad, he didn't give my mom no money. And he, like I said, he was a kingpin. He didn't give my mama no money. And so he was just doing his thing and just pretty much left us to fend for ourselves. And so around middle school, my mom, she worked and she saved up enough money. She bought a house. So we moved into a subdivision. So it wasn't as rural. It was still rural. I still heard the cows and the chickens and stuff, but it wasn't as rural as the first place that we lived. And so that's when I met Michael, because he lived across the street from me.
So you were about 9, 10 years old at this time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And his brother one of his brothers is my actual peer, my classmate. So I knew one of his brothers. And so, it was just real regular. Everybody in this neighborhood, we all played together. It was just really fun. And he was in like going to high school pretty much. So I just knew of him. And I was like, oh, well, that's such and such brother, older brother. I never really thought about it.
And he was how much older than you?
He is 5 years older than me.
Okay.
And so flash forward, I get into my senior year in high school. I'm 17, did amazing in high school, had amazing grades. I had scholarships already lined up. And my class, I was in a program. It was a medical program. But we were like the first students in like Louisiana that they allowed us to get our CNA license while we were still in high school. And,
oh, wow.
But they actually went even further in our program. We got a CNA license, but it was really like we were in medical school. Like we did a lot. I actually assisted in a splenectomy. They handed me the tools and everything. Like I scrubbed up, like I was in the operating room. And like they actually taught us how to do a surgery. And I was like, y'all let the high schoolers do this? But
no. I would have had to hop up off that table. Like, nah.
Oh, but no, I didn't kill anybody. So everything went well. So I did a splenectomy. I did a C-section. Like we had real rounds in the hospital. And so it was just really amazing. But the thing about that was, if you were in this program, you had to go like during the beginning of the day, like in the afternoon, you had the option of whether you wanted to return back to school or not.
Okay.
So during that time, I met Michael, and it was just one of those situations to where, looking back, I never should have done it, because I met him while I was in that program, senior in high school. And it was just really, really weird, because I noticed that, like, you knew who sold drugs. And so like when he started selling drugs, like I automatically knew the streets talk. And so that's what made me interested in him. But it was really weird, because before he started selling drugs, he was like a lame. He was a lame. He was like a bookworm and everything like that. And one of my sisters, when she found out I was dealing with him, she was like, "Are you serious? Like, he's a loser and da-da-da-da-da." And so she was like, "We need to leave him alone." But I didn't listen. I was just caught up in the facade of him, selling drugs and, being in that lifestyle. So I actually approached him. I was like, "Hey, Michael, I like you." And he was just like, "For real?" I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Well, okay." And so we hooked up. And after I would have my rounds in the hospital, he would come and get me from the hospital. So I wouldn't go back to school. So he would literally come and get me from the hospital. And we would just go, do our thing. And, it was times he took me on drug runs. And I found out later on that pretty much all the cars that we were in were stolen. And, but I had no clue. I was young. That's all I grew up with. And I just thought like, hey, this is just normal.
Right.
And so I graduated high school. Thankfully, I never got caught in anything with him. Graduated from high school. I went to Xavier for pre-med, because I was serious about being a doctor. I'm a doctor now, just not a medical doctor. I'm a Juris doctor.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Xavier for pre-med. And of course, that was in New Orleans. So I wasn't really dealing with him as much, because he was still in the country. But it was off and on. When I would come home during the breaks and the holidays or the weekends, we would link up. And I still knew what he was doing. But it still didn't bother me, because at that time it was still like just regular for me.
Right.
And, I ended up leaving him alone. Something happened. I changed school. So I went to another part of Louisiana to go to school. And so I didn't talk to him anymore. But it was like, I remember it was almost when I was graduate, because I graduated from undergrad in 2011. And I remember during that year, he called me and he was like, "Hey, I'm in the area." And I just found it really weird, because the school that I was at that time was really, really in the country. So I'm like, "Why are you out here?" And he was like, "Well, can I stop by the apartment or whatever?" And I was like, "Okay, yeah, no problem." And then when he came, he asked me like, "Hey, can I stay for a couple of days?" And I was like, "Okay, well, no problem." And the whole time he was there, it was just really weird. He was very antsy. He was very like shifty, moving around, like always looking out the window. And I just figured it was, okay, well, maybe he's out here doing some, criminal activity or something like that. But I found out later on, he actually was like on the run from the police, for real. And so I was aiding and abetting, and I had no clue.
Oh my God.
Yes. And so.
And you a teenager and he's putting you in that kind of situation.
Yes. It was at that time in 2011, I was in my early 20s. So I was in my early 20s, but I still had no clue at that time that he was on the run.
Right.
And so, we fell off again. It was always that situation like that. We fell off again. I go to grad school, because I'm always serious about my education, even with my background and, my family's background. I've always been very, very serious about pursuing like the highest level of education that I can. So I started graduate school. I was in Baton Rouge at Southern University. And one time I remember I was walking around the neighborhood, because at that time I moved back with my mom in the country. So I was walking around the neighborhood, And one of his homeboys, that I know, he stopped me. He was like, hey, I need you to come here. I was like, well, what's going on? He was like, I really need to talk to you. I was like, well, what's going on? He was like, the feds got Michael. I was like, are you serious? He was like, yeah, the feds picked him up. They got him, they holding him. And he was like, he pretty much, Michael sent his friend to contact me, because I guess he couldn't contact me from the jail, or I changed my number so much to where I was like, okay, so his friend stopped me. He was like, hey, this is what's going on. But he didn't tell me why the feds got him. So I still had no clue. So he was like, well, what's your number? I'm going to give it to him, and then he's going to contact you. I said, okay. So Michael contacts me, and, we're talking or whatever. And I'm telling him like, hey, you're locked up right now. So really don't really tell me anything that's going on, because I don't know if this call is being recorded.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I noticed that it was just really crazy, Deb, because I actually got back with him while he was, waiting for trial and his sentencing. And so
did you go to see him, or this all took place over the phone?
It all took place over the phone. I never ever went to go see him. But at the point to where he reached out to me via his friend, he was pretty much almost at the point of sentencing. And so I had no clue. And I remember him asking me like, hey, can you call the federal public defender and ask them some questions? And I was just like, no, like, I'm not your wife. I'm not your family member. So I can't even talk to these people on your behalf. So I did tell him no. And then it came down, he got a sentence. And what he got a sentence for, he got caught up in a huge counterfeit money ring. The U.S. Marshals were involved, the federal agents, FBI, the CIA, like everybody was involved. And so I had no clue that he was counterfeiting. All I knew that he was, dealing drugs. I literally had no clue about the counterfeit money. But it's really crazy because I literally never asked him for anything, because I've always worked and I've always had money for my scholarships and things like that. So it never dawned on me that he, was counterfeiting money. And also I always was taught by the men in my family, like, hey, if you're going to deal with somebody who in this lifestyle and you're not married to them, it's always best if you don't know anything, because you don't have any of spousal privilege. So if the police stops you, you can honestly say, hey, I don't know anything. And
right.
You're like, I literally was raised like that. So I never asked him what he was doing. I just always knew, but I didn't know about the counterfeit at all.
Well, you were away, so I mean, it would really, and wasn't really dealing with him, so it would be no reason for him to, he's going to call you up and say, yeah, guess what? I'm into counterfeit now.
And also, he was never flashy, and I was always taught to like never deal with a flashy guy, because none of the men, like even my dad, he never was flashy. My dad never had the cars, never had he always dressed nice, but he never had like the name brands on it. Those, I hate to bring up his name. I'm not going to bring up his name, but they call it the Cosby sweaters.
Oh, yeah.
My dad, he always would dress like that. And so he just like a regular old guy, nobody would ever notice anything. So I always would get with guys like that who was not flashy. And Michael, he was not flashy at all. Even in the cars that I found out later on that were stolen, they were like regular cars, like Toyotas, Camrys, things like that. Nothing that would really, really bring attention to you. So I was really just blown aback. So I'm in grad school. Of course, I had just started grad school. That grad program was 3 years. And he ended up getting a 2-year sentence. But at that time, I didn't put two and two together about, okay, all he did, all the charges and the actual sentence and how small the sentence was, because I was so busy with grad school. I was traveling, I was doing all of these conferences. And so I was, when guys in jail, they'll tell you anything. They'll tell you anything. And I knew that going in because, my father and my uncle and, plenty of men in my family have been in jail, but you always think it'll never happen to me.
Right.
So, I will always talk to him. When you're in the feds, they actually have more more privileges than if you're in a state prison. So they had internet, they had cable TV, and it was just really weird. Like he was in a low maximum security prison because his crime wasn't violent,
Right.
something monetary. So he was like, it would just like be a regular conversation. You're like, oh, well, you know, I'm in this softball league and we're going to have this tournament against this other prison. And so we're traveling to this part of the United States, you know.
They used to call federal prisons country clubs.
Yes.
Yeah, in comparison to the state pen.
So he was just having a blast. He was just having a blast in the feds. And he was like, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And I was like, okay. And so flash forward, he ends up being released. And of course, you know, he didn't have his own place. So he was staying with his brother, who was my classmate. And so I would, you know, at the time I was still staying with my mom. I didn't have my own place. So of course he couldn't stay with me because my mom wasn't going to have that. So I didn't have the issue to where he actually moved in with me.
Mm-hmm.
I would see him very, very frequently throughout the week at his brother's place. You know, we would always be together. And, you know, pretty much he was using me to, I never really gave him money, but he was using my labor. Like if he needed to go to the parole place, I would take him there. If he needed to go get a new ID, like anything official that he needed to satisfy the requirements and the conditions of his parole, I was pretty much the go-to person to help make sure he got there, make sure you're like, okay, you're reading this paperwork right, and things like that. So it was never a monetary exchange between us. It was more of like a physical and mental labor.
Yep, services.
Yes. And of course, you know, I found out later on he was dealing with other people. But I'm bringing that up as far as I really wanted to tell my story because I wanted to lay the foundation, because there was a lot of things that I found out way after the fact that I didn't know that during that time that I was dealing with him, from when he got the sentencing until he was released, that I literally put my life in danger. So he only received a 2-year sentence.
Yeah, that's very unusual. So what happened?
He snitched on everybody. He snitched on everybody. And I didn't know, but he pretty much had a hit out on him, and he still does. So I was with him all this time, and something could happen to me.
Yeah, because when they start shooting at the car or whatnot, they don't care who's in it.
They don't care. They're shooting everybody. They're shooting everybody. And I was in a position to where I could have been taken out because people were really after him. Like he really ratted on some big name people. Because I just remember thinking, like, I know he's not that smart to put that together on his own. But it was just so much that I had going on in my life with school and everything. I never gave myself a chance to really sit down and think things through. But I just remember thinking, like, 2 years, you know, that just doesn't seem right for the fact that the U.S. Marshals was after him, the CIA had opened an investigation on him, the FBI, you know, he really was on the Fed's radar. And just flash forward, you know, he got out. Of course, he went back into the same lifestyle with drugs. And so there was a situation that happened. Well, let me flash forward because all this happened on the same day.
On the same day?
Yeah, on the same day when I officially left him alone. Because what happened was, now mind you, I've been dealing with him since I'm 17, right there.
Right, off and on, right.
Having eggplant. So this particular time, you know, this is after he, you know, got out and I was helping him get his life together and everything like that. We had eggplant numerous times after he got out of prison. And this particular night, I was over there and I remember him telling me, like, before we engaged in eggplant, he was like, oh, well, I'm going to go hang out with such and such this evening. And that was another childhood friend of ours. And they were like brothers. And I knew that both of them, you know, were in the drug gangs together. And I actually talked to the guy on the phone. I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you in years. I hope everything okay. You know, I love you so much. You know, y'all just have fun tonight. And so, okay, let me backtrack. So after I had that conversation, we were going to engage in eggplant. And then he asked me to perform anal activities on him. And so, yes, on him. And so I knew immediately what he was doing when he was in jail, when he was in prison.
Oh, get out of here.
So
Eesh.
I knew immediately because I've been dealing with you since I'm 17. You've
Right.
never ever asked me anything like this. You go to the feds. I'm pretty sure people in there found out you were a snitch because they know, like they know, because it's in your file. Like if you tell on people, it's in your file.
Mm-hmm.
And the other prisoners, they have access to that. So I'm pretty sure that the people in the federal penitentiary found out that he was a snitch. And how it is now, sometimes they will rape you, but now in prisons they'll give you the option. And most of the time, the guys, they'll just submit because they're just like, okay, I don't want to fight or anything like that.
Right.
So it's not in like any physical force, but it's still rape. But they just like, okay, let me just go ahead and do this and get it over.
Yeah, that's under coercion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So you think that's what happened to him?
yeah, I think that's what happened to him. And I think that he grew to like it because when we got out, that night he asked me, to do that. And it was so funny, Deb, because at this time I was working a night shift. Like it was really crazy. I was going to grad school from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. And then I was working from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. So from 9 p.m. in that little window of time, that's when all this drama went down. I was like, okay, well, let me go see him and let me have some eggplant before I go to work, so I can be energized before I go to work and work this graveyard shift. And then he asked me this, and it was so funny because I just remember that I didn't even have all my clothes on. I just ran out of the apartment so fast. I was in my car, it's like still trying to put my clothes on. And so I had to rush back home. Of course, I'm grabbing bleach and everything. I'm throwing it on me. I'm in the shower, like scrubbing.
It's like bathing in Pine Sol.
I'm like, I still have to go to work. I'm like, oh my gosh, I still have to go to work. I just can't believe this. And so I go to work, and thankfully I make it on time. I don't know how, I made it to work on time, but I made it to work on time. I finished my shift, and it was like 6 a.m. He was blowing my phone up. And I'm like, this is weird because he usually never, ever calls me this early. So I answered the phone, and he was like, oh my gosh, like, where are you? I was like, I'm leaving work. What's going on? He was like, such and such is not breathing. And he was talking about the friend who I had spoke to the night before that he said that he was going to hang out with. And I was like, what you mean he's not breathing? Like, he's not breathing. Like, he was like, he OD'd. And I think he's dead. And I'm like, what do you want me to do? Like, why are you telling me this? And he was like, I need you to go down the street and tell his grandmother. I'm like, I'm not going down the street and telling this guy's grandmother, hey, your grandson OD and he's dead now.
Yeah, he's laying there dead and he overdosed on drugs. Let me just tell you, this old lady, what's wrong with him?
So Michael's mom, she ended up calling me, and she was like, don't go over there. I know the lady don't know you, but she knows me because we all were in the same subdivision. So she was like, I'm going to go over there and tell her everything. So it was a whole scandal. The police picked Michael up. He was under investigation, pretty much for murder of our childhood friend. And I honestly believe that they let him go simply because our friend was Black. Because in Louisiana, when people OD, especially if they're Caucasian, and the police, like, there's an investigation, usually somebody's going to jail at the end of that investigation. And I honestly think that because our friend was just a Black man who OD'd, that they didn't really care.
Oh.
So they just went through the motions of the investigations just to say that they did. But I found out later on that Michael actually pretty much killed him.
He gave him the drugs?
Yeah, like he knew the drugs were bad and gave it to him. He knew.
What do you think was his motive, though? Did he hate this guy or something?
What I heard from years later was that our friend, he had got picked up by the police. He was under investigation as well for something. I'm not really sure. Probably was drugs as well. but somebody told me that Michael was the tip off to the police. So it could have been that he was jealous of our friend, because our friend, he was really, really popular. Like even to this day, on his birthday and even for the anniversary of his death, like on Instagram, everybody's posting pictures of him. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, we miss you. We love you. You know, he was really, really popular. He was a really, really popular guy. And he was my classmate as well. And it was just a lot of things that I found out about Michael after the fact. I thought that he was selling drugs, but he actually wasn't selling drugs. He was buying large quantities of crack cocaine and heroin to use it. He was using it. And I had no clue.
So this guy just went like completely downhill. I wonder what happened to him from going from a bookworm to that.
Yeah.
What in the world?
No, and nobody knows. And so what I thought was like, okay, he's selling these drugs, he's doing this. He actually was feeding his addiction. And that's why he got into the counterfeiting, so he can get the money to buy the drugs so he can use it. But he was very, if you looked at him during the time where I was with him, you never would have known that he was using. You know, I've been around some real crackheads and some real heroin users. And now that I'm looking back, as far as because he was doing intravenous drugs as well. Now looking back, I'm remembering that he always wore like long sleeves. He always wore long sleeves. He always wore like turtleneck shirts, because he was just sticking himself everywhere. You know, if you sticking yourself everywhere, sometimes you'll bust out a vein. And so they'll just have to go all over their body in order to inject the drug. So he wore a lot of long sleeve shirts, a lot of turtleneck shirts to cover it up. And also he listened to a lot of dark music. And I just thought he listened to a lot of screw music out of Texas. Even though we're not from Texas, he listened to a lot of chopped and screwed music. And those chopped and screwed artists, most of them are dead from taking liquid heroin, codeine and lean. A lot of those screw artists died from using that. So he was listening to people who were doing the same thing that he was doing. And
oh my God, what in the world?
And I just, and I also remember too, like when we would engage in Eggplant, or even if we weren't engaging in Eggplant and I would just be with him, whatever room we were in, like he would always keep it really, really dark. It was just really, really weird. So he was like, had some serious mental issues going on before the drugs. Because there's one artist that he was listening to out of Texas. His name is Zero, and a lot of his music is very, very negative, very, very negative, and very depressive. And I was just like, I didn't put two and two together because I was young, and you know, a lot of people.
Well, you don't. But that's why we're doing this, because you can share, you know, what you finally learned with other people, so they don't make the same mistake.
Yes, and a lot of people, you know, sometimes I'll still listen to screw music now, but it's not often, because I'm like, this music is like death music. If you listen to their lyrics, it's like they're calling up on their own deaths. Like, it's really scary if you really sit down and listen to a lot of the music. So he was listening to.
I've never heard of it, so I'm just like, what?
Screw is out of Houston with DJ Screw, and there's a lot of other artists as well. But the majority of those artists, Miss Deb, they're dead, and it's because they were abusing liquid heroin, which is codeine and lean, which is very popular, and that shuts your organs down. It shuts your organs down.
So basically what you have is people who are basically on a suicide mission, but they just don't do it so fast. They do it slow. Okay.
Yes. And actually, like, what they'll do is, you know, the lean, that's what they call it. The lean, it actually slows down your organs. And then on top of that, they'll listen to the chopped and screwed music, which is purposely slowed down and chopped. And so it's just really, really scary. It's just, because it's like their organs are already being slowing down, and then they're listening to music, which is furthermore slowing their whole bodily functions down as well. And to them, that's a good time.
Okay, I now have officially heard everything.
Yes, to drink liquid heroin, which is lean, that's what they call it in the streets, and then to listen to this deep, dark music. And so he was doing a lot of that. It was just a lot of stuff that I'm looking back on. I really put myself in danger, because if I would have, been with him when the U.S. Marshals apprehended him for the counterfeit and money ring, that would have affected me from getting into law school.
Oh, heck yeah, because you would have had a felony charge too.
It would have affected me big time. And that's one thing that they don't play. Like, you can, for law school, you can sell drugs, you know, as long as you show that you turned your life around, you know, you're an upstanding citizen, they'll still let you in, they'll let you take the bar. But if you get caught with something dealing with fraud or money, or something dealing with children, like raping a child or molesting a child, it's a wrap. You ain't getting into
Right.
nobody's bar program if you get hit with any type of monetary abuse charges. And so I just was like clueless the whole time. And I'm just,
So what, Sarah, now, you know, tell us, it's okay with all of this, because this sounds like a nightmare.
yeah.
What are your words of warning for young girls that might be in a similar situation? Because, you know, I think one of the key things is like that was normalized behavior for you. So you didn't even really question it until you got exposed to something else. But let's just say that that's not the case, because a lot of these girls get involved with these guys and they're not, you know, that's not their family background. They have very like upstanding, you know, like regular go to work at the post office kind of parents and stuff like that. But they seem to be very attracted to men that have that dangerous side. So do
Yeah.
you have any guidance for them
I
on
do.
what to do?
I do, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because when I was in undergrad at my first school, which is Xavier, one of my classmates, she was from the suburbs of Chicago. So she always went to private Catholic schools and things of that nature. So when we would come home, she wouldn't go back to Illinois. She would come home with me on breaks and weekends, and we would all hang out. It would be like a double date, me and Michael and Michael's friend. I didn't know at that time that she was going back and dealing with Michael, but he actually got her addicted to crack cocaine. But she was so a sitting duck, you know, she was one of those young ladies that came from that privileged background, thought it was fun, and she got caught up. But Michael knew I didn't play. You know, he know I don't do crack cocaine, I don't do heroin, I don't do none of that. And so he never ever approached me ever with pulling out a crack pipe or pulling out a needle. But she got caught up, and she still hasn't shaken back from that addiction. And we started undergrad in 2007, and she still hasn't shaken back. And so I just want to tell young ladies, it's not glitz and glamour, it's not fun. Your life is in danger, especially if you don't come from that background, because you don't know. You know, I came from that background, so it was some things that I was able to maneuver. Like, I would always tell him, don't tell me what you're doing. Or when I found out that he was taking me on the drug runs, I actually got upset. I'm like, don't do that again. And he was like, okay, I won't do that anymore. But young ladies who are, you know, they're watching media, watching Love and Hip Hop, listening to these rap music songs, they think that it's fun. But if somebody comes to you, you know, you could be with a guy who's in that lifestyle. And like I said before, if they come in to rob him and shoot him and kill him, you're going to get shot and killed too. And that's just what it is. And so also just tell young ladies, don't do it. Just don't do it. You know, even if you don't know at first, once you find out that a guy is in that lifestyle, leave him alone. There's no good that can come from that. Don't hold any guy down who's in jail, especially if he's not your husband, and especially if he hasn't gone to jail for protecting you, protecting his family, or for some political cause. Then you don't really need to deal with him, because your life will be ruined. And now that I'm on this side of the law, I'm learning that if you married to a guy who's a felon, it's a lot of things that you can be prohibited from doing, like certain loans, bank loans, like things of that nature. If they find out that your spouse is a felon, you won't be able to get a lot of access to capital. Because there are certain laws that prohibit certain felons from gaining access to certain capitals in the forms of loans and grants and things of that nature. So you're really messing with your money by dealing with a felon. You also put yourself in a position to, like, say for instance, if I would have got caught up with him, I wouldn't have been able to even get into law school or medical school, because medical school was my first plan. But things happen and I end up going to law school. You won't be able to get into certain doctorate programs or professional programs if you have a felony. It's just people will look at you crazy. Like if you're in the upper echelon of academia and then they find out that your husband is a felon and he's not one of those men who are truly, truly reformed, and they have like community centers and, they're actually giving money back to the community after they've served their sentence. Because I work with guys now who are like that, but they're far few and in between. After they get their sentence, they don't even talk to women when they get released. They know, hey, I need to do what I need to do as a man, get on my own feet, make my own money, become a productive, upstanding citizen of society, and then I'm going to go look for a wife. If he's asking you for help while he's in jail or right after he gets released, no, do not deal with him whatsoever.
That's what I say too.
Yes, ma'am. Also, leave the religion alone. Nobody is coming to save you, not some invisible man, nor any mortal man. Take care of your mental and physical health. That's very important. I just didn't realize, because I was going through a lot of depression at that time too, but I didn't know that he was the cause of a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
Just because of the lifestyle that he was in, that energy that he was bringing. And then the fact that I realized, like, hey, I was laying down with somebody who's pretty much a homosexual, and then he murdered our friend, that really did something to me mentally. It did. Like for 6 months, I was really in a very deep space because he actually showed up to the funeral. Nobody knew he murdered our friend until after the funeral. He was a pallbearer at the funeral.
Get out of here. Oh, he was just doing the most.
Yeah, and then I know in the South, especially during funerals, like they'll put like gold and money and everything in the casket to bury their family members. He was actually looking in the casket to see if they had gold and money, because he was trying to rob our friend's deceased body. And we were collecting money for our friend, like our classmates, we all got together. He tried to steal the money that we had collected to give to the family. It was just really, really bad. And for me to know that I was dealing with somebody like that, that was really hard on me. So take care of your mental and physical health. Always stay true to your educational goals. Don't stop, because it was a point in time when I had told him, like, hey, I'm thinking about going into law school. I never thought about law school before. I just didn't have the credentials that I needed to get into medical school. But I'm like, I want to go to some type of professional program. And he was like, oh, well, that was always a dream of mine to go to law school. And I realized, like, he just started hating on me and try to, keep me from pursuing law school. And I was like, I don't play that. When it comes to my education, I'm really, really serious. So your education comes first before a man. And always pay attention to what they say when you receive certain educational accolades or accomplishments. They'll try to snub you. I know in grad school we won a competition, a history competition, because I have a master's in history. And so I was doing a lot of competitions, like quiz bowls and things like that. Mm-hmm. And he was just very off-putting and would snub me when I said, oh, well, I coached because as a grad student, I would coach the undergrad history students. And, we were going all over and winning competitions and doing things. And he was just like, oh, okay. Oh, what you telling me for? Oh, congratulations. And that undertone was behind it, like, oh, he's really hating on me. If you were raised in a background that I was raised in, and of course I experienced a lot of trauma due to my upbringing. Go to trauma-informed therapy. That's a real thing, and they will give you the help that you need. I've been working with them for over a year now, and Deb, I kid you not, my life has improved tenfold since I've been.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Therapy, yes, ma'am. And because I've been to therapy and counseling off and on, since I was younger, but I'm in the South, so most of it was religious based. They weren't informed in no trauma-informed therapy or anything like that, especially sexual trauma, because I experienced a lot of sexual trauma when I was young. And going to that therapy when I started last year, it's just like a black cloud has been removed from my mind.
Oh, and that's wonderful. Look at you.
It's like, wow, I'm really, really excited about life, because it was just like I've always just been moving throughout life and not really experiencing it, because it's always been, for me, I always knew education was my saving grace. And so even though I was still in that world, because that's my family is in that world, I was still like, okay, I got to go to school at the same time. You know, I still have to go to school. I still have to go to school, but I was still kind of lost at the same time. And so the trauma-informed therapy helped me realize, like, your upbringing was not normal at all. Like, you're not supposed to walk into a courtroom and people know immediately by looking at your last name who your grandpa and your dad is, because they were kingpins.
Right, in a courtroom.
Because they were kingpins. And one time I had a traffic ticket in a parish, because we have parishes down here, in a parish that my grandpa and my dad, they're actually from. And so I went into the courtroom, I kid you not, I had a ticket, I was going to pay it. They looked at my last name and they were just like, you just here for a ticket? Are you sure? And then I was like, yeah, I'm just here for a ticket. And then once again, the clerk started questioning me about, you know, my paternal side of my family. And then they found out, you know, I was in law school. And then it was like the big talk of the town. I kid you not. It was a big talk of the town that such and such has a daughter and she's pretty much an attorney. And
they like, wait, how did this happen?
Yeah.
Daddy and grandfather and attorney. Huh?
Yes. And one of my, because I am in a sorority, and one of my sorors, one of the elder sorors, she's from that parish too. And she came back, like after I got initiated into the sorority, and I knew the lady didn't mean no harm at all, Deb. She's like, oh my gosh, you know, I went back and I told everybody in the church that such and such has a daughter and she's in law school, and oh my gosh, and you know, I just can't believe it. And it was like the talk of the churches, the talk of the town. I didn't grow up with my dad. A lot of people, they knew he had daughters, because my dad, he doesn't have any sons. They knew he had daughters, but they never knew who we were exactly, because we didn't grow up with him.
Right.
So it was just, now that I am in a position that I am in now, I'm like, it gets really, really old. And I had some choice words with my dad behind that. Like, we got into a real huge argument. I told him, like, this is what your actions have caused me. This is what I have to deal with. This is what, like, we got into, it turned into a physical altercation. He didn't hit me, but I laid hands on him.
Oh no, she pounding on her daddy. So you have any closing words that summarize this whole experience up for the young ladies?
Yes, young ladies, don't deal with them. It's not fun. It's not cool. It's not enticing. I don't care what you're seeing on TV, Love and Hip Hop, all these reality shows. It's a very dangerous world. And most young ladies, like my college roommate, she got addicted to crack cocaine because she literally had no clue and she never bounced back. And that's usually what happens to those young ladies. They either get addicted to some drug, they either get sex trafficked, they either get, you know, the guys will pump them with babies or diseases or beat them. I've never really heard a true happy ending out of these situations.
Right.
So deal with any guy who's in that life, especially if you're not about that life. So don't deal with those guys at all. Just stay focused, you know, listen to Deb and her dating rules, go through all her videos. Because now, Deb, now that I'm in the legal field, these lawyers, they can't even touch me because they be playing games too. And I'm like, nope. In my mind, like, I listen to Deb, you're a narc, get away from me.
Yeah, I worked in the legal field here in California and Texas.
Yeah, they're horrible.
Many years, and they're
terrible.
Even though it pays well and stuff, people be like, well, you have other experience. Why don't you just go back? And I'd be like, no, I'm done.
Yeah, the men so just stay focused, leave the religion alone, leave the illusions that you see on TV alone, all this Love and Hip Hop. And I keep saying this, but these young ladies are really looking at these shows and thinking this is how things are supposed to go. It's not supposed to be like this, especially in my age group. I'm 30. They really pattern their lives off of what they see on TV. I don't watch TV. I haven't watched TV really since I was 12 years old. So I never really got caught up in a lot of things that are out there in the media. But stay away from the felons. Do not hold anybody down. If he's not your husband, especially if he's not your husband, because you don't have any spousal privilege, and you will get hit with a charge and a sentence as well, because these men are out here ratting on everybody these days. It's not like
And then some of them are even lying so that the woman, they set her up so
Yep.
he takes the fall, and he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. When
They-
he's the one, it's all his drugs and his, you know,
Yes.
his stolen property and all the stuff is all him. But
They
you
are
know, they all like, well, I'm gonna hold my man down. I'm not going to snitch on my man and all the stuff. Should I be singing like a canary?
If he's not
It was him. It was him. It was him.
if he's not your husband, and if he hasn't gone to jail for protecting you, your children, somebody in your family, or himself, like true self-defense or for real political cause, do not deal with them. Let them go through that penitentiary process on their own.
I'm with you.
They have to go through that on their own. And if they come out and they feel like they want to change their life around, wait till they change their life around. If you really feel like you want to be with this guy, don't help him any step of the way. Don't put nothing on his books. Don't write him no letter, nothing at all. Do not do it.
This is going to be interesting to see what people have to say after they listen to your story. I can't wait.
Yeah.
Be sure to stop by. You know, once I get this up, I'm gonna try to get it up later today, and you know, be sure to stop by so that if they have questions and stuff, you can respond to them.
Yes,
of course, you know, in a 45-minute interview, we can't get everything, but I think this is a good start. You gave some really, really good tips for young ladies on what to watch out for. Shoot, some of the older ones too, especially the church ones, because they had a church, you know, they be trying to minister up in the prisons.
They do.
That's how they get a lot of women.
Yeah, they do. They still do that to this day.
Yes, no. I'm not going to nobody's jail to do nothing.
Leave the religion alone. And I work inside of the prison system because I work in criminal justice reform, doing policy and legislation. And of course, the guys, right now we're not in the prison because of coronavirus, but of course, you know, they're always trying to get my number. I'm like, you can't do anything for me. Like I always tell my clients, you know, don't do that again. You're being inappropriate. I'm a professional. I'm here to help you. And if you do this again, I'm going to have to close your file. And they know I'm serious. They know, okay, we can't try her.
Yeah, this just ain't having it.
Yeah.
Well, Sarah, thank you for stopping by and sharing your stories and advice.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, your insight and experience with the listeners. And like I said, I'm sure they'll have a lot of questions for you. Just get ready.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, girl. Thank you, girl. And we'll talk soon.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.